Hey everyone, welcome to a brand new video. I want to make an interesting video today. What I can think of is what is something that people might think of back in the day when they were in English class or writing class. Well, I'm thinking an essay because an essay was one of the most important parts when it comes to English or writing classes because of how detailed and complex they can be sometimes at the beginning, but once you master them, you'll get very good at it. And that's what today's topic is, but there's going to be a twist. The twist is that some certain types of YouTube videos are an essay. What do I mean by that? Well, that will be discussed at the end of the video. But first, let's do a brief or shortened version of the structures of an essay. We're going to start from introduction, thesis, body, paragraph, and then the conclusion. And also, during all that, we'll discuss ethos, pathos, and logos. So, let us begin. We're going to start with the introduction. The introduction is always the important part of the essay because you gotta make sure that you ensure the reader that you're going to get a good experience. And what I mean is you should have the player invested into that essay, and you got to make sure it's gripping and compelling. And this is where the thesis come in. The thesis is the most important part of the introduction inside of itself. It's the topic at hand that's going to be discussed, and with this topic you gotta make sure that everything works together. And with a good topic comes a great way to structure your body paragraphs. But let's go back to the thesis. With a thesis, you gotta make something controversial out of the statement. Anything can be controversial because an opinion is controversial. Because not many will agree with a type of opinion like, oh, bananas are better than oranges, or I prefer this show from this movie. Opinions like that. Usually with today's society, that opinions are more of a controversial side because of the climate we live in. But that's on for a different video. Let's talk about how a thesis can work and not work. You gotta make sure that the player is gripped in. And when I mean player, I'm just saying the reader, just in case if you're wondering. Is that you gotta make sure that it's an interesting topic. You can't talk about something bland. That's not gonna work. You gotta make a compelling argument. Something like the pharmaceutical company, gun control, anything like that. And that is interesting hot topics as of the current year. And with stuff like that comes the body paragraph. With the body paragraph, you gotta make sure mostly that you show both sides of the argument. Mostly, you shouldn't lean more towards one side than the other. Then the reader will show that they are not interested. And what I mean that is that if you show biased, they will get very bored of it because you don't want the reader to get bored. And with all that, you gotta make sure that you have good sources. And good sources are like .gov and .org. .com is okay, but never go to a blog. Never go to a blog. Those are very much opinionated. And mostly some .com stuff. .org and .gov give you the best results that you can find, and everything else in that matter. And now finally the conclusion. The conclusion is just wrapping everything up in a tiny little bow and then presenting it as the end. Nothing special to it, but you gotta make sure the conclusion is good too. But let's go to the most interesting part of this all. Ethos, logos, and pathos. Let's start with ethos. It's talking about a culture or the characters of a culture. Very simple. But let's get more into it. Logos, logic, showing evidence and all of that. You gotta make sure with logos that you are presenting evidence. Say in a paragraph you're talking about statistics. You gotta make sure those statistics are linked inside of the essay so people can look and see that the statistics are real. And that's about it with logos. Now let's go to the very interesting one of pathos. Why do I find pathos so interesting, you may ask? Well, it's because it's based all around emotion, and opinions are emotion as well, in a sort of sense. But with pathos, it's to persuade the reader with emotion. Subjects like gun control are a pathos thing in itself when it comes to that. And pathos can be used a lot when it comes to a subject like that. And it could target the heartstrings. Examples like the classic, "Would somebody please think of the children?" That is a perfect example of pathos. That's tugging at the heartstrings. It's like, oh, I don't want to harm the children. I don't want children harmed. I should be for this. That's how they hook, line, and sinker you into the discussions like that. And with pathos, you don't need much evidence or no evidence at all. All you need to do is pander to the heart, and you can win any argument like that if people are gullible enough to go with that pathos. With all that, now for the most interesting thing, YouTube videos being an essay. How can a YouTube video be an essay? Well, I'm going to talk about a few things. The first one is reviews. A review like a movie, TV show, book, whatever. Most of it would be around an opinion. And it's mostly an opinion, so a review can mostly be pathos. But it's also can be logos depending on what they show. Like, oh, here's the statistics of the box office when this movie released. Or here's the scale of all the viewers of this TV show, or the book sales of this certain book, stuff like that. That is sometimes logos of itself, but I don't see that very often. But here's the opposite of review: analysis. Analysis is around logos itself because they're analyzing a certain scene, a character. Like, oh, this scene reminiscents of an old Renaissance painting, and then they say the Renaissance painting and show it and all that. That is analyzing. You're also analyzing deep into the character, deep into everything. You're looking at every nook and cranny and thinking of many things piling on top of each other. Next, we would go with political videos. Political videos are logos and pathos at the same time because it's showing the politics of one thing, like a news article, and then someone debunking it with using logos and maybe using pathos as a comedic effect. Or, depending on the subject of an article, news, or anything like that, pathos can also be used to persuade the watcher. In that sort of sense. That's the top 3 I can think of on my mind. No, news. Sometimes with news, they would use pathos, but not all the time. It's just straight logos, sometimes an opinion, but mostly logos. But it's best not to avoid news because, it's important, but make sure you recognize when someone is being biased inside of a news show. That's a problem nowadays. I should probably make a video on that, but that's for a later date. But with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if I missed anything or you want to add something of your own, leave it down in the comments down below. Hit all those YouTube buttons, like, share, subscribe, and hey, hopefully I get to see you guys on Twitter too. Until then, I hope I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye, and please take care.